Welcome back to the hashtag I Be My Everywhere show. My name is Josh Bander. I'm your host. Thanks so much, Jim Rohde, for coming into the show. Thanks so much.
It's good to be here.
Well, it's great to have you. Being in the IBMI space for a while, I'd love to hear a little about your story. I'd love to hear about why you love the IBMI so much, and maybe you could share your background, and I think people will be really interested to hear that.
Yeah, so I started working in the IBMI space. This was back in 1985 when I was still in college. I got a part-time job at Lawson Software in Minneapolis and started working on there. Moved out to Denver a few years later, worked for a manufacturer there that had a trucking division and got involved in the trucking space there. And I've been kind of involved in trucking for the whole time I've been developing. I moved from there to a software company in North Carolina, writing software for fleet maintenance. And I've gone from the System 38 to the AS400 to all of its permutations and now the IBMI, which is my favorite. It's been a great journey for me. I think one of the things I really love about it is just how easy it is to work in the platform and how easy it is to develop software. And I think what I found the bottom line of most businesses is transactional processing, right? It's getting things done, and most of that happens transactionally. What's kind of interesting is that in the time that I've been doing it at both software companies that I worked for, we were developing essentially the same product on two different platforms using two different coding languages, two different everything, but the product was essentially the same. And where that really took root was while I was in North Carolina, worked on a product for 20 some years where I had a small team of maybe 3 developers, including myself, 1 person, 1 support person, with some really large companies using our software. They were developing what we call the Windows version of that product on other platforms. And what was interesting is that while I had a really small team, they had a team of anywhere from 20 to 30 developers, anywhere from 5 to 20 people, really doing the same thing. I mean, obviously, we didn't keep the product feature for feature, but from 10,000 feet, it was the same product doing the same thing. And one thing I love about the Eye is just how much you can do with few people. You don't have to have people who are DBAs. They had 2 or 3 DBAs. They had people who really just all they did was monitor SQL performance. Then you have to have somebody who runs the servers. And then as you grow, you have to buy another server and another server. And then you have to get people to run those servers, and you have to hire another person because there's too many servers for one person to run. Back in those days, there was a good chunk of time where that Microsoft stack was not very resilient, crashed a lot, and that's why a lot of people were on the Eye, was because it was so powerful and because it was so stable. So it's been a great run.
I think that's a very interesting take. I think that a lot of times we view IBM as not the most glamorous or not the coolest on the block. But to your point, what you said originally, which is the fact that it's all about the transactions. And does the transaction, is it stable? Does it work every single time? And can you do it with less people? Why would you say that you only required the 3 or 4 people?
I think that the RPG programming language really allows you to access the database in a much more efficient way. I think there's a lot less that you have to build around the program itself. The operating system is really robust, has always been evolving from the time where, hey, we were just inside the box to growing to the point where we were writing APIs to websites and eventually even hosting websites using the Eye. And there's just a lot that's in the box in the operating system that doesn't require additional personnel to build and maintain.
One thing I think is interesting, you're talking about something that at the beginning of the IBMI's existence was created with the forethought and vision of what you're talking about. Maybe you could share some experiences you've had with the different clients you worked with and share what their experiences were with using the IBMI.
Yeah, that's a good point, because one of the things that as I was working for the software vendor that we could do really simply that was extremely difficult on the Windows side was we had a lot of customers who were very demanding and paid us a lot of money. And so they said, well, it would be great if it could do this. And so we would get together and we would say, okay, well, let's modify the system or this one program to perform in this particular way, maybe add some business logic. And I could do that and then just send out that small change to the product and they could install it on their system. They would have that change. Right. And then when we release the next version, we would fold that change into the standard product. In the other application on the other platform, you can't do that. You have to send the entire product out, and every change that you make somehow manages to break something somewhere else, right? And so we could respond very nimbly to our customers' demands by only sending out one program or one small set of programs to invoke a change to the product that they wanted, and they wouldn't have to wait for another release. And we wouldn't have to like just stop the whole show of everybody developing, everybody going through the whole case cycle to get this one change out to them.
Yeah, and what I think is interesting to me is that as your clients were doing both, there's obviously the IBMI section as well as the Windows people. And what would you say is the green screen? And people don't like
Yeah.
the green screen. And from your experience, like, is that the only reason why that people are moving over from the IBMI over to the Windows products?
Well, I think it's that, but I also think part of it is you've got a lot of CIOs and CFOs that have no understanding of the platform. When there's turnover at a company in their IT department, the people who are now in charge aren't familiar with the platform, and so they want something in that they're familiar with. So I think that's a real big reason why there's others, but I think that's a big reason why.
Got it. And when you're talking about like, the future of IBMI, where do you see the platform growing? I mean, we just saw 7.6 just came out. I mean, it looks like things are going in the right direction. What's your opinion about the future of IBMI?
I think it's still got a really long shelf life. My experience in working in both worlds, because for a while I managed the development teams for both the IBMI and the Windows product. The Windows product, there's a lot of change, right? The technology keeps changing and changing. And I think that the stability of the eye is going to help keep the cost of ownership low. And I think that's one of the really big things to make sure that people are educated about the true cost of ownership for running that box. And I think a lot of things that people are doing in the sort of the GUI space of putting GUI front ends on existing and a lot of the modernization. I mean, really now you can create from scratch a very modern looking product that can be served on the web. We did that where I was. One of the funny things about that was I was doing a sales demo of it one time for our company. And as I was going through the demo, one of the sales guys raises his hand and he goes, "What is this?" I said, "This is the IBMI." He goes, "But what's it running on?" I said, "Well, it's running on our server back in the office a couple states away." And he goes, "Why is it so fast?" And of course, I told him it was a superior operating system. And getting back to your green screen thing too, I think there's a lot of people who do like the green screen. Once you get familiar with it, you realize how fast it is and how much work you can get done. Memorizing keystrokes is a lot easier than memorizing mouse clicks. And this other story, I had this guy one time, I was on site at a customer and he was complaining to me about something with this particular piece of the product and what do you want changed. And you can see if I go here and here and here, and I want to do this, it'd be great if it would do this instead. And if you could add this here. And he was going so fast that finally I had to stop him. And I said, "Look, dude, I wrote this, but I can't keep up with you. You're going so fast." Screens were just flying by and I couldn't keep up. So, there's a lot of things that I think just education of people is really important in knowing what you can do and what the benefits of the eye are.
Yeah, certainly. I think that people just are not familiar with it. And that's the whole entire purpose of this is really to show people that it is a good platform, that people should be looking to invest in it rather than divesting of it. If you had a message to the younger developers who are looking at the different platforms out there, why IBMI?
I think one thing is, ironically, there are a lot of older developers like myself that are going to age out, and there are still a lot of companies working on it. I think there's a lot of great opportunities. Maybe with less competition, you could pick up working in RPG super fast, and it wouldn't even have to be the only thing you could do, right? We've got a guy at our company right now who's a help desk guy, and he's younger, and he went to Common with me last year, and he's learning RPG, and he's going to start being a developer. I think there's a lot of opportunity for people who are younger to get in, sort of take over, and become very valuable.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts about the IBMI community?
Well, I think there are a lot of people that probably aren't that committed to it, again, because they're just lack of education. I know every time I go to Common, I get a super charge out of it. I learn a ton. I think a lot of things that they're doing with younger developers there is really promising and positive. I think it's a great opportunity.
Yeah. And another question for you is from a modernization standpoint, a lot of times people define modernization in a million different ways, and it just means there's so many different things, there's so many different people. And what do you see from the IBMI space from a modernization perspective? What are trends and what are people doing the right thing and maybe perhaps perhaps you can share even if you see things that are not going the right way.
Well, I think one thing, is probably really obvious. If you're developing on the I using RPG, you need to use RPG free. You need to get rid of old code wherever you can, whenever you can. There's some pretty inexpensive tools to convert programs from old versions of RPG to newer versions of RPG. I think embedded SQL is a huge plus as far as just really having modern skills. And then I think just really push yourself and push your company to do things that are new and that haven't been tried before. I mean, really just in the last couple of years, I've started using new opcodes that have been around for a while, but I think a lot of people haven't used, whether it's data into and for parsing data for XML, doing HTTP posts and HTTP gets, just things that you can do. And, that's another thing, just tagging back to Common. It's great to go to Common because a lot of the guys that do classes there have done a lot of really cool stuff, and your eyes kind of get open and you see what you can do if you're kind of stuck in a rut. So I think that as far as modernization goes, you have to it's really up to you. You have to make sure you're doing things that are new and exciting. RPG is constantly coming out with new capabilities. Make sure that you are incorporating that, keeping up to date. There's several good websites, email groups, or LinkedIn groups that you can join where you can be notified of those things so you don't have to go find them all on your own and incorporate that stuff into your code so that, you're writing good code. I mean, honestly, I was in a position where I had gone from being a developer and I was managing as a developer to going completely into management for 4.5 years. And I really hated it. The management part of just being a manager, I really wanted to develop again. And eventually my company gave me the opportunity to leave, and I was able to go and find a job as a developer again within literally a couple of weeks just by using contacts of people that I knew in the industry. And now I'm back to coding full time, which is what I really love to do.
I am very curious. Have you played around with AI?
Well, I use AI every day. Our company has a subscription to Copilot. I use it every day because I'm writing code every day, because I'm always working on new projects and new things where I don't know anything about it and I got to figure it out. So AI is really good there as far as just saying, I want to write this SQL statement, but I don't know the exact syntax, right? So then I can just kind of plug and play.
I am very curious. Have you seen your output and your ability to code faster?
Absolutely. I could write what I want in RPG, but one, it might not be as efficient. And prior to using AI, you had to go Google it. And when you Google it, you get into these forums or things like that where somebody's asked a similar question, but it's really not what you're looking for. And AI is great at just pulling it all in. Now you have to be smart because frequently AI will bring you back sometimes a completely half-baked answer. Sometimes it'll be 75%, sometimes it'll be 90%, sometimes it'll be 99%. So you clearly have to test everything that AI gives you. And sometimes it'll come and it'll say, oh, here's what you should do. And it created 10 SQL statements. I'll say, is there any way to do this in one SQL statement? And they go, oh, thanks for asking. Yeah, there is. Right. But I guarantee you it saves me a couple hours a week. Easy.
That's awesome. That's such a good stat to have because I think it's so important for people to realize that you can utilize AI with RPG. Because I think that a lot of times when we talk about modernization, talking about legacy systems, and people think of it as like a black box. People think of it as like you can't use anything new or can't use anything that the rest of the world's using. But when you start learning that people like yourself that are in the trenches and actively using Copilot or the like and are saving themselves hours and hours like every other developers out there, it's just good for the community to know that and for others to know that like that the box is good, it works, and it rocks.
Yeah, it was kind of funny because when I was back working at the software company and doing the same thing in both products, there wasn't anything that they could do in the Windows environment platform that we couldn't do. Oftentimes they would do it first because they had 30 developers. And so they would build some module or some capability. And I'd go walk over to the manager of that group and say, oh, yeah, I heard you added the XYZ module or component, right? Well, how'd you do that? and they'd explain to me, and then we go back and do it. Right. So there wasn't anything they could do that we couldn't do.
I mean, and you had 3 people on your team and they had
Yes.
30.
Yeah.
That number is crazy. The other question for you is talking about the trucking industry. You've been around the trucking industry for most of your career, and how has it changed and how is it the same?
Well, I mean, for sure, what I've really seen is so much of trucking you have to communicate outside of the box because the constant communication with the truck, the shipper, the customer, the driver is critical to knowing what's going on and providing high levels of service. One thing that I've really seen is that the ability to communicate outside the box has just grown and grown and become much simpler than it was. One of the projects that I worked on at my current job was to basically, there are these clearinghouses or aggregators of data that have websites. So if I'm a shipper or a customer and I don't have the IT staff to build my own website that says, here's where all my loads are on a map, I can subscribe to a service where they've got all of that software built already. And then I go to my shipper and I say, hey, I want you to send all of the satellite GPS pings for where my trucks are at, where my loads are at, to this data warehouse aggregator. And so a lot of what I did was just writing APIs to send data out the door from our system in XML so that those customers of ours could see where their trucks are and where their loads were at.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense because the whole entire world of trucking is, as you mentioned, is that we're all communicating. We're expecting to know where our stuff is at all times. We've come to that expectation, and the fact that we're able to utilize the back end system of the IBMI to be able to utilize it from a transactional standpoint, but also being able to mesh it together with everything else, all the other systems out there, and all the other aggregation of the other data that we need is super relevant.
Yep.
That's great. I very much appreciate your time, Jim. This has been fun. If anyone wants to join the hashtag IBMI Everywhere show, feel free to reach out. You know where to find me. I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to DM me. Talk to you all soon, and thanks so much.
Thanks, Josh.